Guys, guys. Lights are cool. Good morning. Welcome to the informal meeting of the Savannah-Chatham County Board of Public Education. This is an informal meeting. We do not take any votes during this meeting. This is an information-only meeting. I will ask that this was published, and it was. So we will start with our student growth and achievement for choice-filled futures. That's goal 1. And we'll start with our charter school annual report, and we will start with Oglethorpe.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We have had a very good school year this year. It's had more of a normal feel than many previous years, and we got very excited with some of the growth that we've seen academically with our students as measured by iReady testing. And I will have to give a hats off to my testing coordinator. She has embraced her role to the point that she's got the whole school excited about testing, which is totally different than what we've experienced in the past. She is part of a remediation class, also an enrichment class, but she has also gathered together a team of people with her, and it's a big deal when we have a test at Oglethorpe. And the kids aren't nervous about testing anymore, which is good. So our 6th graders saw the most growth with our iReady testing. This was the second administration of the test. And we used the first test that we gave in August as our baseline. And as you can see, you had some really high-performing 6th graders that were doing well in reading, growing 3 grade levels. We didn't see as much growth with our 7th graders or our 8th graders, but in all the grade levels, we saw pretty good growth. Our third iReady administration, we had over 200 students combined in all 3 grade levels that made gains. We incentivized the test. We told the kids if they put forth effort and they made gains, we would get them to the food court at the Oglethorpe Mall. That got their attention a little bit because they all like to eat. We also, after the second administration, we provided a group with a trip to Star Castle. So, you know, that really helped some of these kids, especially in the remediation classes, because we were really pushing hard for, you know, to see what they could do. And so they surprised us. We also made data walls specifically for iReady testing, and they love seeing their name get added to it. So totally different approach than what we've had in the past years. Some of the other active strategies that we used is our double block of math and ELA. And of course, we have reading remediation and math remediation classes that are conducted during our related arts time frame. We really heavily focused on progress monitoring of the students in those remediation classes, and we strictly followed the MTSS RTI process on all grade level teams. So very proud of what the kids have done up to this point. Our average daily attendance this year is 93.2%. I don't know how many other schools are having this issue. We have a tardy issue. We have a hard time getting there on time. I think for us, it's legitimate because if you've got a child that you're taking to Savannah Arts and then you've got another child taking them to another school, so we just get them there and we try to make sure we get them caught up as soon as they get in the school. Our discipline data is there. Naturally, we would like our OSS days to be 0 as any school, but we make them toe the line, and we do have a ripple effects program that's going into place next school year that we hope to alleviate a lot more of those OSS days. Our primary discipline issue this year is classroom disruption. Last year, it was physical aggression. I will trade classroom disruption for physical aggression anytime because basically, in most cases, physical aggression means a fight, and that just tears everything up. We are a fully PBIS implemented school. we finally have a really good handle on that particular initiative, and it's through this behavior app that we have that goes along with the program. And basically, it's connected through PowerSchool, and the teachers all have it on their phones. When they reward the kids for good behavior, the kids have their own bank account, and it's called, the Behavior App Dollars. And we use that with all of our PBIS-related events. So when we look at the data with our teachers, we've got a 68% positive to negative ratio. That means they're saying more positive things to the kids than negative things. Our enrollment, and if you'll notice, seventh grade is larger than any other grade level. It's because we have two seventh grade classes. We had to do that when we moved into the new building. Transportation, Oglethorpe Charter School does not provide transportation. There are many rideshare programs used by our students. We do have some students that are now taking advantage of the CAT busing to get them to and from our school. And we do have a couple of bus stops very close. Our learning environment. We have 4 teaching teams, and the reason we have the 2 seventh grade teaching teams is because when we went into the new building, we were a small school, right around 395 students. Since the school system through East Bloss dollars built Oglethorpe, we were asked to go to max capacity, and the only way we could do that without messing up our instructional model, which was the double block of math and the double block of ELA, was to add an entirely new teaching team. That teaching team is the looping team, so what those folks do, they take a cohort of 150 sixth graders. They stay with those sixth graders in seventh grade. They stay with them in eighth grade, and then the teachers loop back down, and they start the whole process over. We have found over the years, and this is about our 4th looping cycle, that this teaching team, by the time they get to 8th grade, they are tight. And they act totally different than the other teaching teams because these, they grow very close over a 3-year time period. Again, we have a 6-person teaching team. You have 2 math teachers, 2 ELA teachers, 1 science, and 1 social studies teacher per team. By adding the additional grade level, our additional teaching team, we had to really up our offerings in related arts. So we probably offer more than most middle schools. And they're high-quality related arts programs, including our skills and remediation classes for math and reading. We've got our best teachers in those classes. Some of the other things that we do consistently, we are big on leadership clubs. We have a very active National Junior Honor Society. They spend a lot of time at the Ronald McDonald House. Over 60 members in our FBLA. Our Titan ambassadors are shown everywhere around the city. They are really big into community service projects, and then we have a strong student council. Every teacher at Oglethorpe has to do a club. These are held monthly. This is the second favorite thing that our kids say that they like to do. The first thing is grill and chill, but these are our club offerings, and the teachers actually sponsor these clubs, and we adjust our schedule one day a month, and they really enjoy doing this. What we try to do is get them as much face time as possible with each other for the social aspect. And we have found the more we push at them to where they're not on a screen and they can have dialogue with each other, the less problems that we've been experiencing. Other school-wide activities, we do a monthly grill and chill, which that's sponsored by our leadership clubs, our PBS leadership team, cheerleaders, and athletics. And basically, that's 90 minutes during non-core academic time where the kids get to come together. We feed them hamburgers, hot dogs. We're very close to Sam's. We get all the junk food that's not good for them, and they get to socialize for 90 minutes. That's the number one thing they like. Clubs come second, and these other things that we do with them are done after their lunchtime period. Our athletic offerings, we participate in anything and everything that all the other Chatham County schools participate in. This year, we played in the championship game in football, championship game in basketball for boys, championship game in basketball for girls, and we won the city championship in girls. But we push athletics hard at Oglethorpe as well. Some of our human resource and financial management, this is our faculty right here. And we have grown exponentially since we left that tiny school building on Stiles and Gwinnett. At this point in the juncture of our school year, I'm happy to say that all TCAS and LECAS evaluations are completed. We just have a few teachers that haven't signed off on their summatives. Financial snapshot, Oglethorpe Charter School is in good financial shape with $3 million in reserve accounts. We also try to max out our FTE funding consistently every year. Our initiative moving forward is to get all of our newly hired teachers gifted endorsed to fully maximize the funding and give them some needed pedagogy to be successful in the classroom setting. As far as our annual audit, Oglethorpe Charter School has had 23 consecutive years of clean financial audits with no material findings. And this is a snapshot of our board this year, and that board's going to change a little bit with the chairman and vice chair. They are going to swap places next year. My governing board president has been with me for a long time, and she's wanting to try to, get some other folks involved as far as the leadership of the governing board. We have had our whole group training in July, and our board members are currently in the process of completing the remaining hours. I'm open for questions right now. That's all I have.
Ms. Hall?
Good morning.
Good morning.
First, let me ask you, how do you utilize your 6 paraprofessionals?
How do we utilize them? Mm-hmm. We use a inclusion model, and we schedule the kids to where we've got, in most cases, our special education teachers that are math strong in those math and reading classes, and the pairs that we have, they will follow those same special ed kids into the social studies and science classes. But in some cases, we have, pairs that are very strong in both reading and math, and we get them in there.
So they're only used with the special services, not with the regular classrooms?
Yes, ma'am.
I see. Okay. Well, your looping idea intrigues me every time you come up and talk about it. And I've always said that one reason that we're so happy to partner with charter schools is because we can get ideas from you that under your more flexible environment, than we could use. So I'm really intrigued by the looping. My whole idea is that the more we can enrich relationships between the teachers and the students and their parents, the better it's going to be for the whole school environment. And to have the same teachers and teachers have the same students and families for 3 years gives that a chance to really develop and grow. So I'm really hoping that our staff is paying attention and that we might look more in that direction, at least to pilot it in some places. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Grabowski?
Thank you for your presentation, and I really loved hearing about the clubs that you're offering and the opportunities for students to be able to socialize and explore other interest areas. And so you said that every teacher is responsible for, has to
club.
participate in a club.
Yep.
Is that correct?
They sure do. Some of them partner together, but
Okay.
most of them go, solo on their own.
And do those activities take place during the school day, after, or both?
Those particular club listings that we have that the teachers represent, they take place during the school day. Mm-hmm. We thought it was more important to give them that bit of time to be able to get with the kids, and we knew that we couldn't capture all the kids if we kept them after school and tried to do this.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. Thanks for sharing.
Anyone else?
Thank you for your
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you for your presentation. I have 2 questions I would like to ask. One being, again, going back to what Ms. Denise said, these learning environments and these clubs are pretty amazing. Dr. Brinkman asked me about the Netflix and chill.
Nice.
Can you tell me a little bit about
Grill
that?
and chill.
Say again?
Do you say the Netflix and?
There's a you have
Oh,
listed.
as far as the club.
The club.
Yeah. I try to visit all the clubs, and I really, to be honest, I really do not know what that club does.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll leave that there. Tell me this, is there anything that you can identify that the board can do to support you all a little bit more?
Look, you guys have given us support since the time we opened our doors. We value the relationship with you all. as well with, any and every entity in the school system. We've got a good setup, better than any charter school, in my opinion, in the state. We've maintained that. We've had some bumps, a time or two over the years, but no, you guys support us fully.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Okay, Ms. Hall, and then Howard, I'm sorry, Howard Hall, and then Hoskins Brown. Yeah, I was looking at you.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. You always just bring such calmness when you present, and I'm quite sure that that has a lot to do with the environment on your campus. And I appreciate you bringing back a new meaning, or shall I say, old meaning of FaceTime, because we compete with technology, and we know that previously in the years, school is a place for socialization. Mm-hmm. It's a time where students love to congregate together as friends, and that's one of the reasons why we always were excited to go to school. But now with technology, with the technology FaceTime, with these clubs, it brings back a good connotation of what FaceTime really is. And I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the job you did as principal at Tompkins Middle School.
Thank you.
You were a phenomenal principal then, and you continue to be. And thank you for all you do.
Hoskins Brown.
Thank you. I echo my colleagues on kudos and what you've accomplished in your report and in the school environment. So I have kind of a philosophical question for you. You have a lot of practices that you have built over 23 years, strategies that work. You have an extraordinarily stable environment, fiscally, academically, behaviorally. So here's my question for you. If there was a piece or a thing that you would pass to another charter school, I agree with Dr. Howard Hall. You come and you have a very calm presentation. You're like, this is what we did. We're proud of these things, and these are the things that we're aiming for. And other charter schools come with a little more anxiety because they have some challenges that they've not mastered yet. So if you could take one thing from what you do and pass it to another charter school, said, here, take this, try this for what you're trying to do, what would that be?
I don't know. I guess the one thing that comes to mind is you've got to be consistent with everything that you do. When if you tell the kids you're going to have, and the families, you're going to have this program, this is what we're going to do, and you just implement it to the fullest degree. Athletics in particular, I know that my football coach is going to have the kids there every day till 6 o'clock. I know there's other schools that's not going to take place. And, and it's because he wants to get them, if that's what they truly want to do, get them where they need to be. But I've got teachers in the academic setting with that same mindset. But it's consistency of practice, and we operate under the umbrella that we've never arrived. And we just keep pushing the envelope to try, new and different things to make things work. And I didn't on purpose mention the pandemic for, this presentation, because we don't do that at our school anymore. We want to get past that. However, we had a big speed bump when that came around, and finally we have got everything that's clicking the way it's supposed to work. And I'm sure there's a lot of other schools that can say the same thing right now.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so I've got a few questions for you. So all of the red is in academic performance and board related. First, I see that you have the iReady information on here, and I don't know how consistently iReady has translated into GMAS. So, and I guess we just completed GMAS. Are you feeling better about GMAS this time? Let me finish. I'm not done. Okay. Are you feeling better about GMAS this time? And why did your numbers go down that much? Because it went down considerably.
I feel a whole lot better about GMAS this time, especially after, I think it's a mindset that you have to be in. But we had some personnel issues last year where I think that greatly affected our scores, and they were in some key content areas. One of them was sixth grade ELA. I lost my eighth grade math teacher to Johnson to be an academic coach. I also lost my eighth grade ELA teacher to Johnson to be an academic coach. And this all took place like late November-ish. So I feel like we didn't give the kids a good opportunity with a good quality teacher to make moves.
So they've been replaced by a better teacher, I guess.
We hope so, yes. I haven't been around the teachers that I lost. They were very seasoned and had been with me for a while. Good teachers.
Okay. Now I want to go to the board. And, in the world of charter schools, you can live and die by a board. So one of the things that we have on here, under governance training, documentation indicates that not all board members, now you said they have now.
No,
but
we're in I'm talking for this year. We're in the process. That was from on the Chevron report.
Right.
That was last year. So hopefully they're all getting their training in this year. So.
Okay. And that was the third consecutive year in which the board training requirements were not met. So I guess my question is about your board. And just a warning that, the board's going to have to take training seriously.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so, and then this is the second consecutive year that your TICA's evaluation conference not been completed for 19 teachers, and the merit contract, it has been completed, but, so, they're just, I would have a frank discussion with your board chair. In the world of nonprofits, one of the things, I get a little bit alarmed when you have a board chair for 16 years.
She's served on the board for 16 years. She's not been the board chair for 16 years.
Okay,
She
all right.
served as the CFO probably for, 5 or 6 years because she has the CPA accounting degree.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, I will be very interested in seeing your GMAT scores.
Me too.
Thank you.
I hope we do well.
All right, anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Susie King-Taylor.
Good morning, everybody. Dr. Medina from Susie King. I hope you all are having a wonderful Wednesday. This is our academic performance for this year, our progress to annual typical growth. So you can see our scholars have made tremendous growth from winter to spring. In winter, we were at 66% in reading and have gone to 96%, math 42 to 78. And then not as much growth for our middle school scholars, but definitely still a celebration. And this is already. No problem. And then more data, this is disaggregated by grade levels. So kindergarten, 4th grade, and 8th grade saw our most growth, and then not far behind, 2nd, 3rd, and 1st grade, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, also relatively well. 6th and 7th grade, there was some regression there, and I believe that that is also, like Mr. Wall, due to educators, and changes have been made to ensure that we continue to see growth into next year. And this is math, very comparable to reading. So strategies and interventions that were initiated and implemented this year were the free room. So that is being very intentional with our scholars who require just a little bit more behavior support. We are being proactive instead of reactive. We have 100% changed our climate and culture at Susie King, which has just really been phenomenal. There's increased rigor and expectations, not just for our scholars, but also for our educators and what the expectation there is. And we have monthly celebrations and recognition for our student achievement. So our learning environment, we have 2 initiatives, which is place-based learning and peaceful schools. Those have not changed, but we are definitely being more intentional with what those look like. So this is our operational performance. Our scholar enrollment as of today is 290. Our scholar attendance has been consistent at 95%. This year we had 23 major behavior incidents, and that is a huge decrease from where we were at last year. And I think that that is because of 2 things, the climate and culture, and also the implementation of the free room. Free and reduced lunch scholars are at 85%, and our scholars with identified needs, 20% who receive IEPs and 10% who are identified as gifted. And that is K through 8. Our human resource and financial management, our HR updates, we are at 100% of TEKS and LEAKS. TEKS has an asterisk because there were some findings in our TEKS report through the district that I was made aware of, and that has since been remedied. We have 2 vacancies, a parapro and a lower school teacher. We only need 1 instead of 2. And there were no audit findings, and we have an ending fund balance of a little over 29%. So our board governance, that has not changed. Joe is our board chair, and he continues to serve in that role, and that is all of them. So major challenges and priorities going into next year. So some of the key things that we are super proud of and that I am uber excited about is we are moving all the scholars down to Bull Street. So we will be K-8. We have let go of the Raymall lease, and so all of K-8 will be at Bull Street. With the savings of not having to pay for the lease at Raymall, we're able to get transportation through Kelly Tours, which is really exciting. And then we have also added security, which is also something else that I am really happy and proud of, just to ensure the safety of our scholars and our educators. And so because these are going to be really huge operational changes, we are just going to assess their benefits and any concerns through the school year, so that way we can address them going into 25-26. We are going to continue our standards-based classroom and understanding by design lesson plan and unit plans, making sure that our coaches are providing intentional scaffolded support and guidance and utilizing data to ensure our instruction is where it needs to be. So then key action 2, sorry for that typo. Okay, free room, SEL restorative practices, continue training for for the staff. PBIS has been huge this year. We use Dojo and Dojo Points. There is a store every month where they go. They have raffles, and it has been a huge success. And then Positivity Project, which is what we do in the morning for mindfulness, and we have added an additional counselor. Also, additional savings from not having the lease at Raymah. So we will have 2 counselors, one who will be K-3 and then 4 through 8, just so that we can ensure all our scholars are getting the mental support that they need. And then family engagement has really been great this year. They come for all of the fun events. I want to ensure that we have the same amount of support on our academic events. So just really making sure that we can increase our participation there as well. And those are our challenges and priorities for next year. And that is all for my presentation. Questions?
Ms. Hall?
Good morning.
I see you have about 30 students who are identified as gifted over the kindergarten through 8th grade. Give me an idea of what their day is like. What with that number across those grade levels, what are you able to accomplish in terms of their giftedness?
Absolutely. Great question. So we have SAGE. That is what our gifted program is called. And Miss Baker is our lead gifted teacher, and she is absolutely phenomenal. So what Miss Baker does is on Thursdays, she gathers all her K through 8 scholars, and they spend the whole day with her at the lower school, and they do projects, grade level mix and age level mix, and so they create these wonderful projects. They go on field trips. They have created facts around the school with questions to increase the other scholars' understanding of what they are doing. And she takes up the whole floor in the back. We clear out all the offices, and they are laid out, and there's magic happening there. And it's not just for our gifted scholars that she does this for, but she provides a lot of support to our educators who are just general education teachers, and provides them a lot of support for ideas and increased academics for them too, because just because they are not gifted does not mean that they can't rise to those expectations and meet that. So although she spends all day with them on Thursday, it really is across the campus.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what does she get to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday?
So she is also
she's a
our
support.
so she is also our MTSS coordinator, and that really serves well because she can ensure that there is alignment between the support that is given to Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and with the curriculum to make sure that there are no loose ends. So she is phenomenal.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Kachmar?
Good morning. I saw in the data that you had 25 open seats, but then the wait list indicated 91 people on the wait list.
For this current year or last year?
It's the data. It doesn't say. I guess this is 22, 23. Let me ask the question a different way.
Sure.
What is your enrollment? Are you fully enrolled? Do you have a wait list?
So, yes, we do. Going into next year, we will have 301 scholars. That is the max enrollment that we can fit K-8 in the lower school. So it is less than the 331 that our charter says. But we do not, I am very confident that adding any additional scholars into the classrooms will really take away the academic environment. We don't want to stuff them in there. So this is where we can comfortably fit our scholars, 301. We are right now at 296, and we have a wait list of 197. 4th and 8th grade do not have a very long wait list, and so that is where our seats are missing. But I'm sure over the summer we will be right at 301.
And so that 301 number, is that a decision you all made, or was that in consultation with the district?
That is a decision that we made, well, my board and I made, and then also with a company that we have to ensure the space size of the classrooms and things like that. Our budget will afford 301 and still have a healthy reserve, still be able to afford transportation and a counselor. So although we will be 30 less scholars, I don't think that it's going to negatively impact us. We've also historically, although this is my first year in this position, historically the data shows that we've only been at 300 scholars.
Yeah, so I don't have all the data. It's a little concerning, though, that the charter, here's what the charter says you all will do and what we agreed to. I think there are lots of schools that would love to say we're going to serve 50 less kids so we can focus on more of them individually.
I think the charter says up to. I don't think it says exactly 331.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Oh, that was one question. And then I've historically supported the school. I like to give people choice. There's been a historic struggle on the academic and operational side. You know, we have 1 year snapshot. There appears to be some fall to spring progress in academics. I'd love to see that sustained. But now there seems to be, again, back to some challenges on the operational side. You know, so I wish there was consistent focus and growth in both areas. Because if the operational administrative side isn't where it needs to be, you're not going to be able to sustain the success in the academic side as well. So I would just encourage some continued focus on the operational HR side of things as well, and I hope the academic progress continues.
Thank you.
Dr. Bringer?
I'm going to follow up on Mr. Catchmark's line of questioning because years ago when Savannah Classical was in front of us, I followed the same line of thought with them when their contract with our school board says up to this many students. That means if the community wishes to have that many students in that charter school, then that many students should go into that charter school. If you have a wait list, that means our community is asking to go to that school. But you, as a board and as an administration, have decided, because we're going to get better results, to not fulfill the contract. That is how I see it. I understand what you're wanting to do, but I definitely agree with Mr. Catchmar that all of our schools would love to say, sorry, district, please don't send more students here because we want to only have this many because we'll have better results. But we don't, as a public education system, get to decide that. We also wouldn't be able to say, this specialty program would probably have better results if we took 10 less students. But we've built it to fit this many students. So if you have a wait list, that means people in the community of Chatham County want to go to Susie King Taylor, and your contract says it can go up to 330 or 331. Those seats need to be filled if people want them filled.
I 100% agree with you, and we would love a building to be able to do that. So if the district would like to give us a building, I will 100% take all of them. And I'm going to disagree with you 100%. We are not decreasing our enrollment by 30 kids because our numbers are going to be better. We don't know what scholars we're going to have. We don't know what disabilities they're going to have. We don't know what needs they are going to have. As a charter with a lottery, we don't get to pick and choose what scholars we have. And that is nothing that I would not do. And so I cannot guarantee that having 30 less scholars is going to increase our scores.
I'm not saying it. Regardless of scores, if you have a wait list and your contract says you can take up to 330, then students should be rolling off of that wait list and entering your school So the day that one student drops, if there is a wait list of individuals that want to go into that school, the next person on the wait list should be contacted.
That is what happens.
But you're not at 3:30 right now, and you have a wait list. Your
We
paperwork that
don't
was sent to
have-
us says you have 91 students on the wait list. It's in the paperwork that was filled out.
We don't have space for them. Where would you like for us to put them?
Then your contract states 330. Has the fire marshal said that your building cannot hold 330 because you petitioned for 330? So I need Susie King to tell me that somebody outside of Susie King stated your building can't hold 330 because the contract says 330.
I would love for you to come visit our building.
The visit
Yes,
isn't.
Dr. Constance Brown.
I can hear the challenge in the voices of both of you trying to address this issue. I think that presenting the building as a limiting factor is not a productive thing, not because we don't understand the state of the building, but because you all chose the building and you also chose your enrollment number and petitioned for additional grades. So I understand the challenge with the building, and I understand that occurred prior to your administration. But because we were here with the original administration and for all of the applications and all of the modifications to the contract up to this point, it is not productive for the building's limitation to be presented as the most significant obstacle in meeting those numbers. And so I understand also, what Dr. Brinkman is asking is like, you said you're going to do this number. What's the obstacle to doing this number? So has there been a decision-making process where you have limited your class size, that those numbers can't be met?
Our class size are at 25. We cannot hold any more scholars in our building right now. And so I understand and I hear your frustration. Yes, I would love to have all 400 of them in my building. I would love that. That would be astronomical. A dream come true. We are limited by our building. That is 100% true. We have done everything we can to purchase a building, to build a building. There are 110 things that our board has done to get us out of Bull Street. Unfortunately, that is not something that can happen. The culture and climate that was at Raymond and why we are moving our scholars was horrible, horrible. Scholars should not be in that building. I have made the decision. You are right. This is my first year in this administration, and there are going to be decisions that I make that not everybody likes, and that is okay. But at the end of the day, I'm making decisions that is best for the community and the scholars of Susie King Taylor Community School. And if next year we are able to find a new building and I am able to add all the scholars from the wait list, I would be overjoyed. But right now, this is what it is.
So in this moment, I think there are a couple of things. One, when it's always problematic when we only hear the challenges in this presentation when we have a contractual relationship across the whole year. And so when those challenges come that make it difficult or make you unable, make you, the universal you, any contract holder, unable to meet the obligations of the contract, it's really better to talk about that in real time than to talk about it in the annual review process, just because we don't have a resolution in this time period.
I 100% agree with you, Dr. Brown.
The decisions that are made by any charter, whether they're ones that generate terrific outcomes or ones that generate unfortunate outcomes, they are completely owned by the charter. We're not emotional about that. We don't feel some kind of way about whether or not you get to make a decision. It is that the results of the decision generate an accountability that we are obligated to assess because every single charter school, and we've had acrimony with charter relationships. We've had conflicts over decisions and use of resources So this is not new and not unique to Susie King Taylor. We want your success. The place-based model in the application, if you'll look at the review of the application, the place-based model was a problem in the first place. To put a school in a downtown area where other schools had left because buildings were not appropriate for schools there was a big issue with the application in the first place. And you have board members that were authors of that document. So they were aware of the building challenges at the very, very beginning. So I don't think we've spent this much time talking about this school and this problem prior to now. So obviously it's something that we need to address. It's not going to get resolved here, but if you apply for a school that is a place-based school in a historic city, this was one of the main things that was identified as a problem, and it's now manifesting. So let's work together on it.
Absolutely. I'm 100% amicable to that. We've even reached out to the school district and asked if you all had any vacant buildings that you all would be willing to lease to us, to rent to us, not even just to take. And we have been told no, that there aren't any. And so it's not because we're not trying. Yes, sir.
Okay, I need some clarification. When we recently gave them their renewal, did we not, based on their academic performance and everything, did we not restrict them from adding new students?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you.
We did restrict them because they did want to increase their enrollment count.
There you go. All right.
They wanted 408, right?
So what was the base number? And what was the restriction? I think that is
The
really
number
important.
we were asking for was 408, so that way we could get into a new, bigger building.
Okay,
Yeah,
but I mean.
331 was the original number. They wanted to increase to over 400.
Okay, and so are
Oh.
they in compliance or are they not in compliance?
They're in compliance with not to exceed.
Got it.
Not to exceed 331.
Got it.
Okay, and so I'm confused. So the concern from Mr. Kachmar and Dr. Bringman was that they're not, was the 331 number or the 400 number? What was the issue?
My concern was there was a wait list of 91, and they're authorized up to 331, but their enrollment was 290 or 300. And Oglethorpe, in previous conversations, we have said to them, you need to max out your authorized. And I think we did the same thing with classical.
I did.
Yeah.
So they're not at 331?
They're not at 331, and we have schools
And there's
that
a wait
aren't.
list of 91.
that They're
That was the
deciding.
question.
So
they're-
that's not compliant, is it?
Well, it's up to.
Oh, for the
It's
love
up-
of Pete.
I don't
Okay.
think it's compliant.
Okay, I
Because we have
understand.
schools in our district that are over capacity, and we have teachers that are teaching more pupils in their classrooms that don't get the option of saying, we're only going to have 25. Now, if they only had 25 in each class and they had 331, we're good. Have the wait list. One person leaves, bring in another person. But if you got people that want to go there, then those students should have that option. They shouldn't be told, you can't go to that charter school because they've decided they want smaller classrooms.
Okay, I am clear now, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kachmar.
So I didn't have the contract in front of me. If it says up to, then technically there's compliance. I think you're hearing what the board may consider the next time there's a contract renewal. It's if you tell us a number, we want you to hit that number and not have a wait list or minimize the wait list as much as possible. But I don't have the contract in front of me, which is why I was asking the questions.
Well, hopefully this time next year we'll have a building and I can take all the scholars.
But I will tell you this, I mean, I've been hearing for 10 years, gosh, if you would just give us a building, things will be better. And my response is, I wish I could give you a building, but we have other things we need to think about, number one. Number two, the predecessors in leadership at your school came to this district and said, we want to start a charter school. Here's our plan for the facility. It wasn't give us a building. So now to say, oh, if the district would give us a building, things will be better, I think that's a cop-out. I don't think that's 100% accurate, because it's what's going on in the building that contributes more to outcomes. So that said, this is not an adversarial relationship. I've voted yes on every renewal, despite all of the red flags and all of the issues. So I support your mission. I support the school. I want you to be successful. But hanging the hat on, if the district could give us a building, things will be better. I don't think that's the right approach.
Okay, well, I do apologize.
Okay. Howard Hall.
Be long. I think the crux of the problem began when you moved out of Raymond. When you were there, you had the space for the numbers. So that decision to move out of Raymond and to move in the old Notre Dame building has posed problems. So do you think that you could have done something differently while still remaining at Raymond to not be in this deficit with these
No,
numbers?
and I wish that it would have been. The neighborhood or the area where Raymond is located is not safe. There was a shooting and someone.
For point of order, we
Yes.
can't be disparaging communities and neighborhoods in the way that you're doing.
Okay. The environment was not the best that it could be. We have asked Raymond to assist us and allow us to do things to make it more amenable to our scholars, and they had declined. And so it really is the best. And like you all have said, like our board has said, and just trying to make sure that our scholars are getting the best, there needs to be consistency between buildings. We have one hallway, 4 classrooms. They are not getting the best learning environment at Raymond. And for the amount of funds that were being utilized, it was not the best use of funds. And sometimes, like I said, tough decisions need to be made. And we will see what happens and stems from it. But I am 100% confident that it's the best decision and that we will see an increase in scores when all of our scholars are under one building getting the same education, because there will be a lot more oversight. Yes.
So, and I'm going to ask, I'm going to give you the same comment I had for Oglethorpe as far as, I appreciate the I-rating numbers. I hope that they, I'm just wondering in the future, could we wait to do these Chevron numbers? To do this analysis after GMAT scores? Because, anyone can, yes, the I-rating scores look amazing, but we get GMAT scores and they're bad, we're back in the same place.
The trailing report, though.
Okay.
This report is for the previous year. We never consider their contract for the data for this year.
Okay.
It was part of the conversation that we had when we came up with the reporting. The data and accountability team can come up with a recommendation for how to use this year's data. But I was kind of like with you
Yeah. years
ago when we put this together, that we wanted a real-time snapshot, and I was taught that it was not possible.
We have preliminary
Mr.
results if
Dennison.
y'all waited till June.
Mr. Dennison.
I wanted to intervene real quickly because I know there's a meeting that Susie King Taylor has with the state on their charter approval that's in 7 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm sure she's got that on her mind, and I can't imagine what kind of stress she's under right now, given that she
Okay.
has to be in that meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, we're done. You can go.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
And I look forward to
Thank
seeing
you,
y'all
Mr.
next
Dennison.
year.
Thank you. All right, moving on. We're going to run a little bit behind. So next we have our budget process update.
As Mr. Jackson makes his way to the podium, we'll be collaborating on this presentation. It is an ongoing update. Some of the slides you have seen before. We do have some new slides that we want to add for your information and decision-making purposes. But we thought it is important for us to continue to reinforce what our key priorities are, update you as the state sends us new information, and this remains a very iterative and evolving process. So with that said, We do have a few objectives for this session on our budget development process. We want to continue to inform the public and our board that there are influential factors that go into creating a budget. Some of those are imposed by the state and our economic landscape. Other things are decisions that we are making internal, and it's sometimes can be challenging to balance those two things, but we feel like we're in a good place. We want to look at the revenue and expenditures. We also want to continue to reinforce and update you on our district priorities and the rationale for those, and continue to make this a process in which we are getting feedback from our parents, our community stakeholders, and also our employees and the board. So with that said, just to remind you again, there are many factors that are influencing this process. We've got local and state economic factors. We've got enrollment. We've got the fact that the cost to do business and operate continues to rise. And then we also have unfunded state mandates. These are things that we don't necessarily have choice over. They are imposed. However, we have to adjust and accommodate them. The areas in which we do have some choices in decision-making would include our development and resource allocation to the strategic plan. Obviously, we are using a variety of data sources to inform us. We're looking at previous budget decisions and whether we're getting a return on investment. And then again, the ongoing engagement of our parents and community and board. As mentioned before, it's an iterative and collaborative process. We are right on schedule. We got committee feedback a couple of months ago that you all would, it would put us in a better situation for decision making if we advanced a budget earlier. We have made a concerted effort, and to my knowledge, based on what I've heard from the team, this is an earlier draft than you've received in the past, so hopefully we're delivering on that. However, it continues to evolve as we get new information and new input. By the time we get to June, and after much more feedback from our community and board, we will be making final decisions on the budget and also the millage rate. As you can see, here are a schedule of those public opportunities for input. I want to spend just a few minutes on the next couple of slides highlighting what we have learned from our budget survey. We did release a budget survey that had active participation. We had over 1,600 participants. That survey was available for stakeholder input April 10th through the 24th, so about 2 weeks. As you can see, 1,651 participants. Most of those participants, a little over 1,000, were current employees. And the next group that were major participants were our parents and guardians, with about 700 providing feedback. Most of our participants ranged in age from 35 years old to 54 years old. Most of our participants in the survey live in Chatham County. And 47% indicated that they had familiarity with the strategic plan. I'd love for that number to be much higher than that. And we will continue to push our plan forward so that folks can be more engaged with that. And the majority of participants also have lived in the Savannah-Chatham County area for more than a decade. When we look at how the input panned out in terms of stakeholder input, if you'll let your eyes gauge to the top dark green and the light green, these were areas in which our stakeholders indicated were extremely important areas for our district to focus on, or very important. The very important is in lighter green. Overwhelmingly, about 82% of participants indicated a focus needs to continue to be on student engagement and well-being. That is an investment in our wellness center and coordinator, counselors, social workers. So we are continuing to push that effort forward. Next, in terms of stakeholder feedback, there was significant support for our ESOL, our emerging bilingual students, the program director, support staff, teachers, and paraprofessionals. That area was just behind the focus on student engagement, I think about 78% total, if my math is right. And then the last area where we saw significant positive affirmation was around our efforts in increasing our literacy rates. So a significant amount of survey participants indicated an endorsement for our K-12 textbook adoption for English language arts. 71% affirmed this, and 71% also felt that our letters training for teachers was either very important or important. So again, here you can see how our stakeholders voiced their affirmations of our priority areas. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jackson, and he'll continue to give you some financial updates.
Good morning. Good afternoon. As we previously stated, our total enrollment is going down in the district, not by much, but by a little bit. Most of the schools won't see a significant change in their enrollment. Basically, as you all know, we have a pretty transient population that moves from one side of the county to the other. So we're going to have to continue to make adjustment at the school levels, but not as a total district-wide. Really don't have any changes as far as revenue since the Finance Committee meeting. We're just awaiting any day now for the tax digest information from the assessor's office. So the revenue that we project to increase is right at $48.9 million. We have some minor changes to the expenditure side of all of the projected expenditure increase for the general fund. One that I do want to point out, we initially thought that we would have to fully fund the GNETS program. We did get word from the state that they're going to issue another grant. It's only about $2.3 million, so it's about the $927,000 short of the current budget. So there's a proposal to fund the difference to keep the entire staff. That would cost about $927,000. There's also a reduction for the secondary counselors. The presentation from the Finance Committee had 32, but staff decided to reduce that down to 24 to focus on key areas. And the Bernadette Oliver will be able to talk about that a little more in the upcoming slides. This is an additional slide that we included to just show the Fund 100 salaries and benefits, where a majority of the salaries are at the school sites. Then we show the difference of salaries for the central office, campus police, transportation, operations, maintenance, and technology support, some other areas. We wanted to show this particular slide because of a recent article that was in the paper regarding central office salaries. The way school districts report salaries and expenditures and budgets to the state, if it's not coded to a school site, it's considered central office. So regardless of what other department or function there is, it's considered central office. So we have a number of staff, say for instance, the campus police, that's assigned to a school site, but they're centralized in the campus police department. Instructional and pupil support. There are a lot of teachers that are in what we call a district-wide office, but they're not assigned to a school. They're not in a school's budget, but they're assigned to a school, but they're in a district-wide budget. Same with maintenance and the technology support. People that are at the schools every day, they're not really in the central office, they're assigned to schools. However, they're budgeted separately from a school site, so they show up at the state at central office.
I think the emphasis here, if you'll go back to that slide, When you think about most of those categories, with the exception of the orange category, all the other categories, those are individuals that are directly supporting schools. They spend most of their time in schools with kids, but they have to be coded to central office because they're not included in the central office budget. Only about 4% of our general fund budget goes to individuals that indirectly support students. While I would like to see myself as a direct support, I am in the indirect, I'm in the orange. Mr. Jackson's department is in the orange. And so when we're thinking about central office, people who indirectly support, i.e. people at 208 Bull Street, I just want to make sure the narrative is clear, that is what you see in orange, and that represents 4% of our budget. Of that fund, of
correct.
Fund
Yeah, that
100,
fund.
yes.
Correct.
Exactly, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm almost happy that this occurred, that this mistake was stated, so that we could all become fully aware.
Yes.
Because there's some things on here that I was not aware of, and I've been on the board for 12 years. So inadvertently, this has helped us to clarify this, and I think the more we can get this out in any way, that's going to be very important going forward.
Thank you. And tied to the slide previous to that, there will be a reduction in the upcoming school year of about $800,000. So that 4% will continue to decrease because we've cut some central office positions that give us some cost savings.
Okay, next, we've talked earlier about the salary adjustments based upon the governor's proposal to add $2,500 to certified personnel. As a district, we're proposing to do a 5% COLA, which is going to cost about $14.9 million. And of that, $9 million is state funded, the other 5.9 would be locally funded. Here we also talk about the mandated state increase for health benefits, state health. We're looking at the total increase would be about $10 million. Again, of that, we will collect about $5.1 million from the state through QBE earnings. Then there's a local impact of about $5.3 million. This slide was included just to give the public just a view of how the general fund budget in total is divided up among expenditure areas. And we've always stated that our salaries and benefits average about 85% of our operating budget in the general fund, followed by some large expenditures, for instance, for utilities, operating transfers, which are basically our operating transfers or our contribution to the charter schools, textbooks, equipment, and software and purchase services.
So as we think about that pie that you all just saw, most of our budget is tied up in employees' salary and benefits. And a very small piece of the pie gives us the room that we operate in terms of our decision-making, that smaller piece you see to the right of your screen. And so when we think about how we leverage our decision-making around that smaller piece of the pie, we have three options, three pathways that we entertained. And that's what you see on this next slide. We could maintain and enhance current investments, those that we are getting a return on investment for, those that we feel like are helping us pave the way forward as it relates to our strategic plan, and really focus on optimizing execution, because while a resource is allocated, it does not mean the execution of it is optimized. So that's one pathway, is to really just maintain a focus on things that we know are working. Another path we could take, if we decided as a board and as a community we wanted to add things to our current budget and our priorities, we could reduce some of the things, we could reduce more of the things that we're currently doing and reallocate those expenditures to new ideas. And then the last option or pathway we have is that we would have to actually increase our revenue. So we would have to increase the millage rate, seek grant funding, or increase enrollment if we wanted to maintain and add. So those are kind of the three pathways we studied as we moved through our development process internally. When we asked the board, with limited financial margins, what's the best path forward? As a reminder, in our board retreat in March, the board indicated, about 78% of you all indicated that path one would be the path we should take. Now, obviously, that was 2 months ago, and so your sentiments and thoughts may have changed, but we just wanted to remind you of where you were in March when we asked that question. As I've stated earlier, we tried to focus our budget development process on our strategic plan. Here you can see the framework, the key areas around students, stakeholders, employees, and stewardship. And we were very intentional and focused about making sure that every single dollar that we will be asking for in our budget development had a direct impact on one of these areas. We're going to go over a brief high-level overview of those priorities and update you on one specifically. So I'll start queuing Ball Oliver up for that. But in general, our priorities as we are looking at budget development align very much with what the community and our stakeholders said in the survey. Literacy is a huge focus for us, and we're asking for funds to be continue to be allocated towards that. We are bolstering our ESOL support, so you'll see that our priorities align with that, as well as the student engagement piece. And again, that's where our counselors and social workers come into play. We continue to have a focus on our stakeholders and making sure our communication and branding efforts are optimized. So you will see some budget requests as it relates to engagement and communication. Our employees are the heartbeat of the organization, and we are making every effort to make sure that we make ourselves competitive in terms of salary. So you will see efforts in that area so that we can make sure that our salary and benefits are helping us lure and retain talent to the organization. And then stewardship. Obviously, our maintenance and operations and network and technology efforts are important. They are the blood. If our employees are the heart, the blood that keeps the organization moving forward is our facilities, maintenance, and network and technology. So it's important that we make investments in those areas as well. As you'll see on the next slide, our budget process has indicated that we want to ask for the maintenance of our 4 bilingual liaisons, also our ESOL coordinator. But we do have some new positions that we are requesting as it relates to budget priorities, and that would be our ESOL positions. As a reminder, our ESOL students will not be hubbed in schools any longer. They will be dispersed out into the school in the zoned area in which they live. So we are prioritizing making sure those students have the support that they need to make that transition. And also our GNETS program. These are our most fragile special ed students. And while you heard Mr. Jackson say we have gotten word that the state will be funding that with a continued grant, the grant does leave a gap of almost $1 million. And so our budget development process, we want to maintain where that is, which means we're going to have to contribute the $1 million to close that gap. Our focus on literacy and our maintenance around it being the North Star, you can see here that we're asking for a budget of about $5 million to continue that work. You can see here our performance indicators so that we can ensure that we are using our resources and getting the return on investment that we all desire. And then with that said, in priority area 1, we also have a huge focus on our counselors and social workers so that we can ensure that the well-being and engagement of our students. With that said, I'll turn it over to Ms. Ball Oliver. She'll update you on what that plan looks like.
So if you note, we're asking for 24 secondary counselors as new positions. It would be under a staffing enhancement. The board was committed to last year. If you saw an earlier iteration of this, we first had a number of 34. We went back, revisited, because last year there was a commitment for additional counselors, and those counselors are still being utilized. So looking at the data, these 24 secondary counselors would help focus in those areas, especially looking at attendance, advisement, and course placement for our students, as well as that student well-being focus, providing those individual as well as small group counseling services in our schools, crisis response, and collaboration with wraparound service partners. As Ms. Grabowski is familiar, last year we attended a session in which we lobbied for our state to look at how they fund counselors. It's one counselor for hundreds of students, which makes for difficult engagement at the school level with our counselors. So looking at reducing those numbers, especially in our secondary schools where we see higher numbers of attendance concerns. We will maintain the 10 academic deans who help support our counselors as it relates to some of the student well-being and attendance concerns. And of course, our 3 wellness center counselors who serve not only students but staff and also provide a vital resource for our families. And so that total ask is over about $3.8 million. And of course, this line aligns to the strategic.
I think they have
We
questions.
have some questions. Ms. Hall.
Okay. I had one for Dr. Watts when we were talking about the $1 million gap. We must let the public know that we have to undertake that expense.
Yes.
That has to be out there.
Absolutely, because again, these are some of our most fragile students in the district.
That's right.
And that $1 million is not additional funding, it is the maintenance of the existing resources and
stuff.
support that we give those students.
Okay. My question, these secondary counselors, how wonderful. Staging them, are they staged the same in every high school? In other words, if Dion were my counselor when I'm in 9th grade, does she remain my counselor in 10th, 11th, and 12th so that that relationship loops like we were talking about earlier? Or in 10th grade, do I have Mr. Cashmar, 11th grade, Mr. Moss? And is it across the district what way that's staged? Or is it dependent upon the principal and the particular school, how they do that?
So it's dependent right now upon the school and how they do that, but part of that factor is because of the number of counselors. Most of them do try to loop based on last names and continue that process, but it's not always that clean across schools because of the numbers. And we have to remember, as the students do get older, like our 12th graders, our counselors tend to have a lot more responsibility the junior and senior year. So they look at how do we try to help them by sometimes reducing those numbers and spreading them out more to give them smaller caseloads, because it could cause for some additional angst with students because of our counselor numbers. These numbers should help with refining that process, but again, it does depend on schools because you have to remember they have different numbers of counselors at schools. Some have gotten those additional positions based on needs, some have not. This should help with that, but it is not staged exactly alike across all schools, but most do look at last names so that you continue to have the same counselor for all 4 years.
Well, Mr. Moss, this is where equity considerations, I think, play a part, which schools, because we know that the more a student is exposed to the same person, if saying the relationship is a good one, that if we are intentional in trying to see that occurs, yes, there are, sidebars of things that might happen or might need to change, but if the intention is to build a counselor-student relationship that's engaging across their high school experience, then I think we're going to end up being much more fruitful in what we see in our graduating seniors than just, depending on what school you go to, this is who you have or that's what happened. So I guess I'm asking for some intentionality as much as possible. But this is wonderful to see this addition. Thank you.
Ms. Grabowski?
So my daughter got caught in that split with the last name of G. She had one counselor, and then the numbers changed, so she got shifted to another because of that last name grouping. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But when we look at the responsibilities of counselors, it is everything from course placement to student well-being. I mean, it's such a broad net. Do any of our schools utilize their counselors where you may have a counselor that really is hyper-focused on the academics and looking at the areas of focus that our counselors provide versus, I mean, I hear, Ms. Hall, what you're saying about the value of the continuity of that relationship, but especially when you start talking about, after graduation pathways, the amount of specialized knowledge needed for that, is there any school that's looking at maybe splitting those roles a little differently?
So they do both. Unfortunately, our counselors have to do all of that. So you're looking at, I have my core group of students that I support, and I support them across their high school career, and how that may be organized may be a little bit different. It could be by grade level, it could be by last name. But then I may be the counselor that's really excellent at supporting students as they apply for scholarships and that writing component, so then I would be assigned that task. At Johnson High School, I had a specific counselor, and that counselor was really strong in the IB component of things because it was very different and she had different training. So she supported her caseload, but she also supported the IB students in various areas when it was time for their assessments and when they were working towards their diploma. So you have kind of a dual role for our counselors. They're serving their students in their caseload, but they're also specializing in their focus areas. Hence, again, why we need to lower those numbers because of the amount of work that they have to engage in. It is not just working with my individual students, but it's a host of other components they specialize in as well.
Okay. Thank you. Howard Hall?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. SP1D is excellent because we definitely need to see these counselors, and it's directly tied with school climate and classroom management. This is directly tied with that, and we need all the help we can. That will prevent a lot of our students that have to enroll in alternative programs and assist with the classroom management, classroom management, classroom management. I'm always talking about that because that's essential, that's key. And what are we doing for the lower grades, K-8? Because I know that the academic deans, if I'm not mistaken, they're in our high schools. Are they in our middle schools as well, in elementary, or are we just focusing right now on our secondary?
So there are actually, and we have here 10 academic deans, but I'd like to make a point of clarity that all of those deans are not academic. Some of them engage in, I noticed that says 10 academic deans, but our deans are more general and engage in just working with our students. They take a look at the data, and so they have other responsibilities as it relates to relationships and mentoring and actually working alongside those counselors, and they are the ones who actually push, to your point, restorative practices and working with the staff, and we are expanding that training. There are also deans in some of our middle schools. They were able to fund those. Again, our Title I schools, we do not have deans in all of our middle schools. And again, I will make the pitch that there is continued need for support in our elementary schools because currently our elementary schools do not have deans at all. And our middle schools have them, but they are pretty much self-funded through their Title I budgets.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'd also just like to add, one of the reasons you saw a larger number in an earlier iteration of this, and now we've reduced it to 24, is we do, as all school districts are across the country, trying to win the war for talent. And we didn't want to go with a big number of, more than 30 and not be able to hire 30. And then they sit as vacancies, which then contribute to the fund balance, and the students don't get the support. So we reduced it and really tried to concentrate a focus. But if you're out there today and you're working on a counseling degree and you are graduating this summer, we would love to have you apply to Savannah-Chatham County Public School System.
Okay. My question is, and this is great, I am still concerned about mental health counselors. The counselors that you're talking about, these are basically guidance counselors. Okay? We've got to have mental health people in our schools.
So these counselors engage in that work as well. When we talk about student well-being, counseling services, and crisis response,
Are they licensed counselors?
so they do not all hold that licensure, that licensure that you're speaking of. So that would be something that you may have to look at in terms of actually reaching out for that. We do have some that are. That is not a requirement for them to be a school-based counselor. However, they are trained to work with our students as it relates to that. They do receive training in terms of trauma-informed practices and resources and interventions. So they all do that, as well as they are able to actually refer to wraparound services. But it is not a requirement that they maintain that. We are providing training for those who wish to seek that. We do have some that have actually received scholarships and gone through training and then received that additional licensure as well.
Can we do something with the compensation for those people who choose to go ahead and get that extra knowledge base?
I'm sorry.
We're probably not obligated to. I'm just wondering, as an incentive, once we offer this, if I choose, oh yes, I'm going to do that so that I can offer a wider range of help to my students, is there a possibility for compensation for me having that extra licensure?
So we could actually explore that. That's going to be more of an HR question. I do know through our partnership, we do have six counselors who are able to do that, 6 LPCs who can do that. Also, our wellness coordinator holds that licensure as well, but that would be an HR question because that would be getting into their salary and what additional compensation. But it is an additional certification that they do hold.
Well,
That is something we could
as
explore.
a board person, I understand it's HR, but if we're the ones seeing our children, like Mr. Moss is saying, we're seeing our children falter and go up in flames, it's a board consideration beyond HR.
That is something we could consider.
So,
And so that's Kurt and I were talking, when we talked about those 6 LPCs, remember that that's a partnership with Chatham County, and we actually pay for that. So we're paying for those 6 persons to receive that additional training and that additional license as a board. That agreement was signed by the board so that they could attain that. So we have 6 that actually have done that, and I believe we're going to offer that again, correct?
Yeah, so the beauty of intergovernmental agreement, Chatham County, which came to us through the opioids settlement, which is through the Chatham Narcotics team that we work very closely with, and our school counselors and many of the new initiatives that we've launched this year in partnership with other agencies in Chatham County, such as the Mediation Center, for example, has stepped up really big in this particular area. They understood the value of having a licensed professional counselor. They also understood there was a cost to do that. As we talked, that was a intergovernmental agreement the board approved about a year and a half ago, wherein Chatham County would provide those monies through that opioid settlement to support our staff to pursue that LPC distinction. And we're very happy that that's continuing. I don't know the exact number of 6 that are, if they've all fulfilled it just yet, but there are requirements in that agreement for us to provide for those monies. So some of the conversations and work with our partners is we should do more of this. How can we help you do more of this to achieve it? The realities of bringing on an additional 24 counselors and the great work that they'd be doing in our schools, but to elevate them to that higher level to get that LPC designation is certainly a great thing, but it does come with a cost.
well, the fact that we have 6 now, we have 11 high schools, we have 6, if we could get 5, That would be great as a start.
And let me say that all 6 of those may not be in a high school because we do not make them grade specific. But to your point, we have paid stipends in the past for reading endorsements and other additional endorsements. So to what you're asking in terms of paying them to seek that and looking at that, we have done that in other areas before and can explore that for this one as well.
Dr. Brinkman?
Yeah, great conversation. Would like to continue this counselor conversation at our finance meeting next Wednesday. So
There you go. Thank you.
if the players in the room could get us how many people we actually are paying currently as licensed professional counselors, like what are we actually paying these individuals? Because I don't think many of the board members understand that it's a big leap to go from somebody that can be a counselor to an LPC. And then if board members would think on it and do some research on what would be their perfect number, I like it. You know, Connie's already throwing out a number, like what does that look like, you know, and what would we want them to be able to do?
Right.
Just so we can continue the conversation. Don't know if it makes this budget, but we're earlier than we were last year, so we can keep
we are.
talking. But this would definitely be a good addition next Wednesday.
Thank you, Mr. Finance Committee Chair. Thank you. Let's move it. Okay. We'll have our fried chicken soon. Go ahead. Continue.
Okay, the next strategic priority is for stakeholders is our staffing enhancement with our engagement and outreach. Mr. Hedegaard, I will let him talk briefly about that. This is pretty much in his wheelhouse.
No changes since the last meeting.
Okay. At the Finance Committee meeting, or maybe it was our last meeting, one of the things I said was, let's make sure this number is a number that we're going to be able to hire the best people for these positions. So you are confident in that.
How many applicants did you have for the engagement and outreach position?
So Executive Director of Engagement and Outreach, we have about 80 applicants that came in. About half of that pool was actually determined to be qualified. So we had a nice rounded host of individuals to look to. Of course, you know, they will run through the process of determining the years of experience and et cetera, based on where our current pay scale is. But we're very hopeful and confident that we've got some great candidates in there and that they will be ready to join the Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools family.
In the area of our employees, I'll actually pass that to you, Larry.
Earlier, we talked about the cost of living adjustments, the increases for the staff, the transportation, additional compensation for the drivers to make that adjustment from this year to next year. As I pointed out during the Finance Committee, they're currently getting an additional $2 per hour as a supplement, as a part of the American Recovery Grant. We wanted to make sure that they did not lose that increase that they received last year. So the total cost of doing all of those is going to be about $29.8 million, which includes the longevity step for all hourly and exempt employees and the 5.5% cost of living that I mentioned earlier. I also mentioned the adjustment for the bus drivers of funding the additional $2 per hour.
And this is how we will measure our progress in that area as we move forward. And then the last area, I don't believe there were any changes to stewardship either.
No.
So it's just a repeat of what you saw in the last presentation.
Just real quickly on the KPI, it has decreased the number of teacher vacancies. Are we also looking at other positions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, Mr. Jackson, have you heard anything about salaried positions possibly getting overtime if they work over 40 hours? I saw it on the news, I've read it somewhere. Have you heard anything about that? Because that would definitely have a big impact on our budget for salary positions.
Yes, I will let Mr. Ray talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we've always had, well, not always, but at least for more than 20 years, there's been a threshold for what is considered a exempt employee. So that threshold for exempt employee was 24,000 years ago. Now it's up to 48, I believe, and it's going up to 56. So we're talking about that threshold where somebody's is an exempt role, and should they be paid hourly instead of being exempt? For our pay scale, for our exempt, which is our administrative scale has always been above that threshold for the federal government and continues to be above. We looked at it for next year, we're going to be about $9,000 over that threshold. So as long as we're maintaining to be over that threshold, we won't run into that problem of having our non-exempt employees being paid hourly. The profession of teachers is exempt by the federal government, so teachers don't count in that. So if you're looking at that number, you say, well, a teacher makes less than this. It's not about teachers. Think about teachers working 190 days. They're also exempt from that requirement as well.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. And the remaining of the presentation just highlights the fund summaries for the remaining funds that make up the total budget. We have the general fund, debt service, and capital projects. We have our special revenue funds, and just a note to go along with the agenda next week for Finance Committee, when we talk about the counselors, we're going to have staff from compensatory programs to come in and talk about Title I and federal special ed, how they get funded, and how they allocate their funding. This is just a remainder of the special revenue funds. As you all are familiar with, we have a number of them. Then we have our internal service funds to close out workers' comp, unemployment, and employee dental. That takes us to a total preliminary budget of all funds, expenditures of a little over $882 million. The graph here on this particular slide just shows the breakdown that general fund makes up 71% of that total $800 million budget, followed by capital projects and the special revenue funds. And the last is just a calendar. This evening, I believe at 6 o'clock, we have our first public budget hearing, and that will be in this room beginning at 6 o'clock. And the remaining dates are just public hearing for millage rates if they're needed. Okay. Any questions?
Ms. Grabowski.
Just very quickly, on the summary slide with the pie chart, the capital projects, does that represent our eSPLOST
Yes.
budget?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the eSPLOST budget, and that's based upon anticipated expenditures for over the next 12 months.
Okay.
The first 2 years, we started out slow because we were collecting revenue before we got into the bulk of the projects, but over the next 12 months, we plan to spend a good bit of that we have collected.
Just want to clarify. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. He walked out, I didn't even notice. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Jackson? All right, thank you. And I believe that concludes our informal meeting. So motion to adjourn to executive session for legal, real estate, and personnel matters.
Second.
First and second, all in favor? All right, we are adjourned.